Good morning, brothers and sisters. Let me ask you something that may stir your heart and make you pause. If marriage is a blessing from God, then why are so many marriages full of pain, silence, confusion, and even regret? Have you ever looked at two people who stood at the altar with love in their eyes and promises on their lips, only to watch their relationship fall apart, piece by piece? Have you ever wondered, is this really what God meant when he said, "The two shall become one flesh"? Maybe you're single, waiting for the right person, but afraid to repeat what you've seen in others. Maybe you're married, and your soul feels tired from trying to fix something you can't even explain. Or maybe you're just curious, hungry to know the truth behind the idea of kingdom marriage. If you've ever asked yourself these questions, then I want you to stay with me, because in this video, I'm going to give you an answer that no one told you before. Not culture, not tradition, not even the modern church. I'm going to take you back to the original blueprint, what God really had in mind when he created marriage in his kingdom. And once you understand that truth, you'll never look at relationships the same again. So sit back, open your heart, and let this message shift your perspective. And if this speaks to your soul, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. Let's get started. Most people approach marriage with a romantic mindset shaped by feelings, culture, and movies. They're told to follow their heart, find someone who makes them feel alive, and get married once chemistry strikes. But that formula has produced more divorces than destiny. In the kingdom of God, marriage begins with purpose, not passion. When God created Adam, he didn't start with Eve. He began with purpose. Adam was placed in the garden, given a job, authority, boundaries, and fellowship with God. Only when Adam was functioning in his assignment did God say, "It is not good for the man to be alone." God didn't give Adam a woman because he was lonely. He gave Adam a helper because Adam had something to do. Purpose is the divine blueprint that gives direction to a marriage. Without it, even the most beautiful relationship becomes exhausting. You can marry someone you're attracted to and still find yourself unfulfilled because passion was never meant to carry the weight of a lifelong covenant. Passion is seasonal. Purpose is eternal. People often say, "I think I've found the one." But the better question is, do I know why I exist? If you don't know your assignment, how will you recognize your partner in destiny? Two people who don't know their purpose are like two travelers walking in opposite directions, hoping they'll meet on the road. They may connect temporarily, but eventually they drift. There's a reason why marriages built on emotion often dissolve under pressure. When the emotions fade, and they will, what's left? Without shared values, vision, and purpose, people begin to feel disconnected, even when they share a house. Purpose keeps the relationship anchored when passion is nowhere in sight. A young man once shared how he married because of physical attraction. He ignored red flags. She didn't believe in his calling, didn't understand his burden for ministry, and had no interest in building anything together. They were happy at first, but slowly the disconnect grew. He said, "We were living under the same roof, but walking in opposite callings." That marriage ended, not because of infidelity, but because of incompatibility in purpose. A kingdom marriage is not just about happiness, it's about assignment. God brings two people together to expand his will on earth. Your spouse is not just a lover, they are a partner in divine purpose. That's why rushing into marriage without clarity is dangerous. You may end up joining your life to someone whose presence pulls you out of position. Knowing your purpose guards your heart. It gives you discernment. It filters out distractions. It helps you identify someone who isn't just attractive but aligned. It helps you wait because you're not just waiting for a date. You're waiting for a destiny partner. Marriage must be purpose-driven, or it will be problem-filled. This isn't about perfection, it's about direction. When two people have a common purpose, conflict can't destroy them, it refines them, because their eyes are fixed on something bigger than themselves. Kingdom marriage begins with clarity. When you know who you are, why you exist, and where you're going, you'll be able to recognize who should walk beside you. That's how God designed it, not from need, but from purpose. Modern society has downgraded marriage to a contract. A contract is based on performance, convenience, and protection of self-interest. It's written with clauses and escape routes. If the other person fails to meet your expectations, you're free to walk away. This is how the world views marriage, but not the kingdom. In the kingdom, marriage is a covenant, not a contract. A covenant is sacred, eternal, and spiritual. It is not based on conditions, but on commitment. It is an unbreakable bond sealed before God, not just the government. When two people enter into a kingdom marriage, they are not just signing a legal agreement. They are joining their spirits in a divine union that carries eternal weight. A contract protects your rights. A covenant calls you to surrender them. A contract asks, "What's in it for me?" A covenant asks, "What can I give?" In a covenant, love is not based on feelings. It's based on choice. You don't stay because it's easy. You stay because it's holy. God's covenant with his people was never based on their perfection. Time and time again they failed him, but he remained faithful. That's the model of covenant love. It does not disappear when disappointment arrives. It fights, it forgives, it endures. The prophet Hosea was commanded by God to marry Gomer, a woman who would repeatedly betray him. Why would God give such a painful command? Because Hosea's marriage was a living parable of God's covenant with his unfaithful people. His love persisted through betrayal, just like God's love for us. That's covenant. This is not an invitation to tolerate abuse or stay in toxic situations. God does not condone the breaking of a person's spirit under the guise of spiritual commitment, but it is a call to return to the seriousness of covenant. In kingdom marriage, you don't run at the first sign of discomfort. You don't treat the person like a transaction. You serve them as a sacred trust from God. Many marriages break because they were entered into with a contract mentality. As long as you make me happy, I'll stay. But happiness was never the goal. Holiness was. Covenant marriage is where God shapes your character through commitment. It's where he teaches you selflessness, sacrifice, and unconditional love. One woman once said, "I thought I was marrying a soulmate, but I married a mirror. My husband exposed things in me I didn't know were their selfishness, pride, fear." Marriage, especially covenant marriage, will always reveal what singleness hides. But those revelations are opportunities for growth, not excuses to leave. Covenant is about long-term vision. It's not about how things feel today. It's about what you're building tomorrow. When both partners embrace covenant, trust deepens. Walls come down, security replaces fear. In a world of broken promises, kingdom marriage stands as a counter. Cultural testimony. It says, we don't give up when it's hard, we press in, we heal, we grow, we stay. That's the power of covenant. Marriage in the kingdom is not just about companionship or emotional fulfillment. It's about the joining of two people to complete an assignment from God. While affection plays a beautiful role in marriage, it is not the foundation. It's a fruit of the greater purpose. Affection without assignment is like a ship with no compass. It may sail smoothly for a time, but it has no direction, no target, and no eternal impact. When God brought Eve to Adam, he didn't say, "Here is someone to make you feel good." He said, "I will make a helper suitable for you." The word helper implies assistance with something already in motion. That means Eve was not just a wife. She was a partner in destiny. She was created to help Adam fulfill what God had already commanded him to do, to rule, to manage, to cultivate, and to guard the garden. Assignment gives marriage weight. It turns routine days into opportunities for legacy. When a husband and wife understand they've been called to build something that lasts beyond them, every disagreement becomes smaller. Purpose overrides personal preference. Many couples fall into crisis not because they don't love each other, but because they have no shared mission. They live under the same roof but build separate dreams. They raise children but don't raise vision. They work jobs but don't work purpose. Over time, the relationship becomes dry, not because the feelings disappeared, but because the fire of assignment was never lit. A kingdom couple must ask, what are we building for the kingdom of God together? Is it a ministry, a business that funds mission work, a home that raises leaders for the next generation? A marriage focused on assignment doesn't look inward all the time. It looks outward. It asks, how can we serve together? Not just, how can we be happy together? There's a reason the enemy fights kingdom marriages harder than cultural ones. When two people are aligned in God's assignment, they become a threat to darkness. Satan doesn't mind two people being in love, but when those two people are in purposeful unity, raising godly children, serving others, building communities, and walking in obedience, that's a problem for him. Affection is important. God is not against romance, but he is more concerned with whether your union produces kingdom fruit. You can have candles and cuddles, but if your union doesn't produce kingdom impact, you're living below the original design. Every kingdom marriage is supposed to reproduce purpose, not just children. A man once shared how his marriage was transformed when he and his wife stopped focusing on their differences and began asking God what their assignment was. They began mentoring young couples, hosting small groups, and volunteering with the homeless. That shift in focus drew them closer than ever before, not because problems disappeared, but because mission gave meaning to the mess. God joins people for purpose. Two are better than one because they have a good return for their labor. That return is not just emotional, it's eternal. A kingdom marriage is a platform for assignment. It's a strategy of heaven to establish God's will on earth. Without assignment, affection fades. But when a couple lives on mission, love becomes a weapon and unity becomes power. The world teaches that marriage completes you, that until you find someone, you're missing a piece of yourself. But in the kingdom, marriage is not about completing broken people. It's about uniting whole individuals who already know who they are in God. Wholeness must come before union. Otherwise, two broken people will bring double the dysfunction into one house. Adam was not half a man when God brought Eve. He was fully functioning, walking in identity, carrying vision, managing responsibility, and living in alignment with God. Eve was not a fix for Adam. She was a fit. She wasn't created to complete him. She was created to complement him. They both came from God, not from each other. Wholeness means being emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and purposefully grounded before entering a covenant. It means you don't depend on your spouse to define you, validate you, or repair wounds they didn't cause. That burden is too heavy for any human. Only God can make a person whole. Many marriages break under the pressure of unmet expectations. One spouse expects the other to fill a void only God was meant to fill. When those expectations go unmet, disappointment grows and blame takes root. Wholeness removes that cycle. It allows both individuals to give love without needing to manipulate it in return. Being single is not a curse. It's the season for becoming whole. It's the time to discover your identity, confront your insecurities, heal from your past, and cultivate your purpose. If you skip this process, marriage becomes a hiding place instead of a partnership. You don't marry to escape brokenness. You marry to multiply strength. A woman once said, "I thought marriage would fix my loneliness. But after the wedding, I felt more alone than ever." That's when I realized I had used marriage to avoid healing. She had never confronted her abandonment wounds. She wanted her husband to constantly affirm her because she couldn't affirm herself. That marriage almost collapsed under the pressure until she began her journey toward wholeness. Wholeness empowers you to love without fear. You're not constantly afraid of rejection or betrayal because your identity isn't tied to another person's behavior. You're anchored in God's love. This security frees you to serve without needing control and to forgive without losing yourself. A kingdom marriage is a union of two whole people becoming one, not in identity, but in mission. Wholeness doesn't mean perfection. It means maturity. It means knowing your weaknesses, confronting your triggers, and inviting God to grow you. When two whole people come together, the marriage becomes a garden for fruit, not a battlefield for healing. It becomes a place of overflow, not emotional deficit. Each spouse brings their strength, their healing, their confidence, and their faith. And what they build together is stable because it's not trying to fix what was broken. It's trying to expand what's already been healed. Kingdom marriage can't fix you. It can't define you. It was never meant to. If you are not whole before marriage, you will bleed onto someone who did not cut you. But when you walk into marriage healed, whole, and clear in who you are, you become a blessing, not a burden. Kingdom marriage does not operate by the world's standards of dominance or control. It functions under divine order, where leadership and submission are not about superiority or inferiority, but about roles, responsibility, and alignment. When God designed marriage, he placed the man as the head, not as a dictator, but as a servant, leader. The woman, in turn, is called to submit, not in weakness, but in strength, trusting in a man who submits to God. Submission in the kingdom is not suppression. It is voluntary alignment under authority for the sake of order and purpose. A wife's submission becomes powerful when her husband is submitted to Christ. If a man is not under authority, he becomes dangerous to lead. God's pattern was never for a man to control his wife, but to lead her with love, vision, and sacrifice. When Paul wrote that husbands should love their wives as Christ loved the church, he established the standard. Christ died for the church. He washed her with the word. He didn't use authority to dominate, but to serve. Kingdom leadership in marriage means the husband carries the responsibility to protect, provide, and guide, not just physically, but spiritually and emotionally. A man who leads with fear has misunderstood kingdom order. Fear is not a kingdom tool. Love is. Leadership in the kingdom starts with service. Jesus said, "Whoever wants to be great among you must be your servant." This applies in the home too. Leadership is not about shouting louder or demanding obedience. It's about being the first to sacrifice, the first to apologize, the first to pray, and the first to seek God when things go wrong. A woman's role in kingdom marriage is not passive. Submission is active strength. It takes spiritual maturity to honor a flawed man because you trust the God he serves. A submissive wife is not silent. She is strategic. She uses her influence to build, not to break. She covers her husband in prayer, encourages him when he's weak, and offers wisdom with grace. A couple once shared how they transformed their marriage by restoring divine order. The wife had been leading everything, finances, spiritual life, even parenting decisions, because the husband was passive, but it was wearing her out. When he began stepping into his role as the spiritual head of the home, praying over his family, initiating devotion, and taking responsibility for direction, her heart found rest. Submission became a joy, not a burden. The kingdom principle is not about who's more important. Both husband and wife are equally valuable, but without order there is chaos. Just like in the military, everyone has a rank, not to belittle, but to enable strategic unity. God's order is protection, not oppression. When the man leads with humility and vision, and the woman submits with wisdom and trust, the marriage becomes a reflection of Christ and his church, The home operates in peace. Decisions are made with clarity. Children grow up watching the beauty of godly structure. The kingdom advances because two people have aligned under heaven's hierarchy. Marriage in the kingdom is a covenant, not a contract. This one truth separates worldly relationships from divine unions. A contract is based on performance. If one party fails, the other can legally withdraw, but a covenant is based on commitment, regardless of circumstance. Covenant says, even if you fall short, I will stand. It is not a matter of convenience, it's a matter of character. A contract protects rights. A covenant surrenders rights. A contract can be broken if one side doesn't meet the terms. A covenant endures because it's built on unconditional love, sealed in sacrifice, and backed by God. When you say, I do, in kingdom terms, you are not just agreeing with your spouse. You are entering into a sacred agreement with God Himself. God does not break covenants. When He made covenant with Abraham, He walked between the pieces of sacrifice alone, indicating that He would uphold His promise regardless of man's failure. This is the model for kingdom marriage. It's not a 50/50 agreement. It's 100/100. Each spouse gives all, even when the other is weak. In our culture, marriage has become disposable. People treat vows like suggestions. As long as you make me happy, I'll stay. But happiness was never the foundation of kingdom marriage. Holiness was, growth was, purpose was. Happiness is a byproduct, not the goal. When two people stay committed through hardship, they experience a depth of love that contracts can never offer. A couple married for 40 years once said their marriage survived not because they didn't have hard times, but because divorce was never an option. They argued, disagreed, and even had seasons of silence, but their covenant held them in place. They believed God was the third cord in their union, and they refused to cut Him out when things got hard. Contracts are driven by self-preservation. Covenants are driven by self-denial. Jesus didn't wait until we got everything right before committing to us. He loved us while we were still sinners. That's covenant. In marriage, that same spirit must live. When your spouse is weak, you cover them, not criticize them. When they fail, you restore, not reject. Marriage becomes powerful when both people mirror Christ. Covenant gives security. In a contract, you fear failure because it might cost you everything. In a covenant, you find grace. You confess, you grow, and you become better. A kingdom spouse does not walk away when flaws are exposed. They stand and fight, not with fists, but with faith. Kingdom marriage is not built on chemistry. It's built on covenant. Chemistry fades, conflict arises, but covenant keeps the door closed to quitting. It turns I do into I will, no matter what the season looks like. A strong covenant will carry you through seasons your emotions cannot. When passion cools, covenant keeps the fire lit. When storms come, covenant becomes the anchor. That's why the enemy works overtime to make marriage feel like a contract, because he knows contracts break easy. But a covenant, sealed in God's presence, carries eternal power. The foundation of kingdom marriage is not pleasure, but purpose. Pleasure is a beautiful gift that accompanies marriage, but it is not the reason God instituted it. When a man and a woman come together under divine covenant, God has a purpose that transcends romance, feelings, and physical satisfaction. That purpose is rooted in advancing His kingdom on earth. Every kingdom couple is a team on assignment. They are not just lovers, they are laborers in the vineyard of God. Their union is supposed to produce fruit that impacts generations, nations, and destinies. Pleasure alone cannot sustain a marriage, purpose will. When you wake up next to someone who shares your spiritual assignment, even in seasons of hardship, your bond remains unshakable. Too many marriages fail because they were built on emotional connection or physical attraction. These things fade with time, but when purpose is at the center, storms strengthen the relationship instead of sinking it. A man and a woman who know why they're together can survive disappointments, grow through disagreements, and endure seasons of lack because their why is greater than the moment. Purpose gives direction. It defines priorities. when both husband and wife are committed to fulfilling the purpose of God in each other's lives. They stop competing and start completing one another. The man recognizes his wife's gifts and cultivates them. The woman honors her husband's calling and pushes him toward it. Together, they become a power couple, not by popularity, but by kingdom productivity. A couple once shared how they had drifted apart after 15 years of marriage. The spark was gone, and they were considering separation. But during counseling, they were asked, "What assignment did God give your marriage?" They had never considered that question. That night, they prayed together for the first time in months. Slowly, they began to see how their combined talents, passions, and testimonies could be used to mentor younger couples. Purpose was reignited, and passion followed. Pleasure without purpose leads to emptiness, but purpose fuels intimacy. When you serve together, pray together, build together, you grow closer in ways surface-level relationships never will. The couple who sweats together in the mission of God finds strength no bed can give. Kingdom marriage produces legacy. It's not just about building a home. It's about raising kingdom children, influencing communities, and leaving behind a model of faithfulness. Purpose makes your marriage bigger than the two of you. It becomes a vessel God uses to bring healing, order, and truth into the world. Purpose requires vision. Couples must sit down, seek God together, and ask, "Why did you join us? What have you called us to do that we could not do alone?" This question shifts the focus from personal satisfaction to divine significance. When purpose is discovered and pursued, pleasure follows in a deeper, richer way. But when purpose is ignored, even the greatest pleasures become temporary and meaningless. Kingdom marriage thrives when both individuals are aligned with the mission of heaven and see each other as partners in something eternal. Marriage is the first institution God created. Before there was a church, before there were governments, there was marriage. That wasn't accidental. It was intentional. Kingdom marriage is designed to reflect heaven on earth. It is a mirror of God's nature, His love, and His covenant with His people. When a man and woman walk in unity under God, their marriage becomes a divine display of the relationship between Christ and His church. The love, the forgiveness, the sacrifice, intimacy, all of it paints a picture of God's heart. This is why the enemy attacks marriages so relentlessly. If he can distort the image, he can confuse the message. Kingdom marriage is spiritual before it is physical. When people see a godly couple, they should catch a glimpse of heaven's culture. A marriage marked by peace, mutual honor, and holiness tells the world that God is real. It becomes a testimony without words. One of the most powerful examples of this was a couple who had experienced betrayal early in their marriage. The husband had made mistakes, and the wife had every right to walk away, but through prayer, counseling, and time, restoration happened. Their marriage didn't just survive, it flourished. Today, they mentor broken couples and speak publicly about forgiveness and healing. Their story is more than emotional, it's spiritual. It's a reflection of redemption. Very heart of the gospel. Kingdom marriage reveals the nature of God. His patience, grace, and justice are all embodied when two people stay committed despite flaws and failures. Every time a couple forgives, chooses love over bitterness, or praise instead of fighting, they reflect God. Their home becomes a sanctuary, a place where heaven's peace is tangible. Children raised in such homes don't just learn about God in Sunday school. They see Him at the dinner table. They witness how their parents resolve conflict, how they support each other, and how they worship together. That experience shapes their view of God for life. Kingdom marriage is one of the most powerful forms of discipleship. When marriages reflect heaven, communities are transformed, churches become stronger, neighborhoods become safer, society begins to heal. That's why the stakes are so high. A broken marriage affects more than the couple, it affects destinies. But a kingdom marriage shines light in darkness. Heaven is not chaotic. It's full of order, peace, and joy. Kingdom marriage, when done God's way, carries that same atmosphere. It's not perfect, but it's pure. It's not without trials, but it's full of truth. Every time a husband loves sacrificially and a wife honors with joy, they are showing the world what heaven looks like in human form. The goal is not just to have a happy marriage, but a holy one. A marriage where God is not a guest, but the foundation. A marriage where worship is not a song, but a lifestyle. A marriage that turns ordinary moments into divine encounters. So many people are suffering in marriage because they were never told the truth. They were told fairy tales, not kingdom principles. But today, your eyes are open. Kingdom marriage is not easy, but it is powerful. It is not built on feelings, but on faith. It is not sustained by sex, but by sacrifice, service, and surrender. If you're single, prepare wisely. If you're married, align your union with heaven's design. And if you're broken, know this: God is a restorer. This is the truth about kingdom marriage. No one told you, but now you know. And when you know better, you can build better.